So for my capstone project, I want to look at creating an interactive art experience that can improve the self-efficacy and mindfulness of my students. And this will be a project where students will create art and the circuitry and also code to make their own designs. So this is what I have going so far. This is my structure that I have. The board has 12 sensors. So I have 12 hooks up here. The hooks are a little loose. I had to kind of fix them with I shoved another nail in it to hold it. I did experiment with some white glue and some Play-Doh, but it didn't harden the way I expected. Here is kind of the back of the art piece where I have different foil paths that are connected to the 12 sensors. So that hangs on these hooks here. And as the student runs their fingers or whole hands on top of the artwork, different sound will be playing. And on the back here, I'm still working on the circuitry, kind of cleaning that up. Earlier today, I just had alligator clips that were hooked and connected to the breadboard. But the problem with that is things are kind of a mess and it makes it less portable. So I also this week worked on learning about the different data types. I feel like I always run into when I'm putting a variable in a function, it's telling me that it can't understand that variable. And most of the time it's because that variable is a data type that function doesn't use. So for example, if the function is calling for a number and I'm feeding it a string, it doesn't understand it as a number. It just sees it as characters. So I also was using a function that was referencing the paths in the directory for the sound files, and it wasn't understanding that path, that I had to go and kind of research some of that functions in the library, that specific PyDub library, to call that file in the correct way. So as far as my board here, I have made everything out of foam. I have some stands like this that the board slides into. I need to make things a little bit more sturdy. I just have it pinned together right now and it holds up well. But I think if this were to be displayed in a place that was a public place, it maybe couldn't handle so many people touching it with an extreme force. I've also reached out to some supervisors about getting some of the plastic dividers, the acrylic dividers that were used for COVID, and to try to make one out of that material and maybe get something that's super sturdy that could withstand a lot of students using it. So I have also talked with Myra Backrack, where she has a lot of pedagogical experiences and teaching students who don't speak English or have language barriers. And we talked about the development of conversational language first before academic language. So I've started to make some lists of what are basic conversational language that students might use when they're describing their experience using this art, or what is that language they want to use to describe just some basic building that they've done. And then I went over with Stephanie, who has a ton of experience with Python, different conversational language that would go with kind of some of the different building blocks of code. And we also talked about some of the ways that we could use less variables to make things a little bit less abstract and more concrete. Um, and to start students off with some code that just uses if conditions before going into more complicated for loops, and nesting conditions inside of other conditions can get very confusing for students to grasp it. Stephanie has not used any types of flow charts, but I was going to kind of explore making some like sample programs that would use flow charts, or just the building blocks so the students could kind of move around the different pieces of the flow chart to put it into a logical order before they would go and code. So I've been really looking at the coding of making a good example for my students, and the construction of the actual like testing board, and my different teaching practices, so that I can make those things that are abstract a little bit more concrete for my students.